So I've always had a special place in my heart for arcade racers, stuff like Burnout, the Horizon series, Need for Speed, but I've never really gotten into sim racers and I've always used the controller. Over the years I've seen people build really elaborate racing sims and I've always really been jealous of that. It's something that I've always wanted to experience. So when Thrustmaster reached out, we chatted for a while and decided it might be cool to get a complete noob's take on both an entry-level wheel and pedal set and then a more high-end wheel and pedal set. So that's exactly what we're gonna do today. You ready? Let's go. Yo, I'm Brian P. You're watching BadSeed Tech, and today we're taking a look at two different racing wheel and pedal sets from Thrustmaster. For our entry-level set, we've got the Ferrari 458 Spider set. This goes for about $100. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got the TXRW Leather Edition. This guy goes for just under $500. For transparency, both these units were sent out by Thrustmaster, but as you should know by now, this doesn't affect my review in any way. Also, throughout today's video, I'll be trying very hard to be mature about the name Thrustmaster. You think that's easy for me? It's not. We're gonna kick things off with the Ferrari 458 set. Again, priced right at or right under $100. The first impression here is that it feels like it would wear that price tag pretty well. It's light and a lot of plastic. Lot of plastic. Both the wheel and base and the pedal set give the impression that they're here for a good time, not a long time, which is understandable because there's a lot of components here for $100. So you got the Ferrari logo, red rubberized grips on the wheel. The wheel is permanently attached to the base here. All the buttons you'd look for on an Xbox device are here. Some controls are cleverly disguised here, like the engine start button doubles as the D-pad. You do have metal paddle shifters here. They have a very authoritative sound. It's not a click, it's more like a thonk. Is that a word? It is now. For pedals, you have two, advertised as being real size, and they do have an element of adjustability. My size 12s mean they're going to stay on the largest configuration. The pedal set, like the wheel and base, is light. It does have a pretty generous amount of rubber stoppers on the bottom to hold it in place, as well as what looks like a couple of threaded holes for mounting on a sim setup. Game of choice for testing is going to be Forza Horizon 4. While I know this isn't a sim game, this is an easy control for me because it's one I play a lot. I'm pretty decent at it with the controller, so it seemed like a good place to start. Mounting the wheel to your desk involves this long screw and this plastic bracket to affix to the underside of the desk. I felt like I needed to take care to not crack this base while I was tightening it down. Once installed, it feels really solid left to right and down, but it does have a little give if you're attempting to push the wheel up, though I'm not sure why you would. Install is super easy. Pedals plug into the base plugs into the console or PC via USB, you're good to go. Because I'm basic, I do normally play this on a controller and I use automatic shifting. Now that being said, I can drive stick, no sweat in real life, but I kind of wanted to get a feel for how this thing interacted with the game before I made things more difficult. The first thing I can tell you is that it felt really disorienting to control a driving game in this manner, like I was learning how to drive all over again. The second thing I can tell you is that within a few minutes, I was having more fun than I'd had in a racing game in some time. I don't normally use cockpit view, but it felt really natural here, and this just makes for a totally different sensation than driving in a follow view from a controller. There are tons of options to customize the controls here in the game, and there's also a few different levels of sensitivity on the wheel, and it definitely took some getting used to. However you handle your controller, how you learn to master drifting, use your e-brake, go into turns, whatever, none of that feels like a transferable skill to using a wheel. The flip side of that is that it didn't really click naturally like I was driving a vehicle. Super fun, but I was still very much aware that I was simply using a different type of controller to experience the game. It was also incredibly humbling because I don't execute nearly as well with this setup as I do after years and years of building up motor memory on a controller. My flooring is laminate over concrete here, and that proved a challenge for the lightweight pedal set. My larger feet also proved to be a bit of a challenge. It was tough to heel toe from gas to brake and keep the base planted. I imagine this will be easier to execute on carpet or when it's mounted in a sim. As it was easier to have my heels planted with one foot on the gas and one on the brake. Tragic, I know, but this allowed me to execute gas, brake, gas motion similar to how I would if I were rocking back and forth on the buttons of a controller. In the end, for $100, the Ferrari 458 feels like a good way to get your foot in the door before you decide how far down the rabbit hole you want to go. Limited rotation degree on the wheel, no force feedback, pedals felt a little cramped for me. It was still a ton of fun, but I wanted more. So let's shift gears. Yes! And talk about the TX leather wrapped set. This thing makes quite an impression during the unboxing. It's heavy. The base is heavy. The wheel is separate and heavy. 3 pedals here instead of 2. They're metal and the base is big and it's heavy. The build quality here, as you would expect for $500, is a night and day difference. The wheel here is leather wrapped with a thick brushed aluminum faceplate, full-size metal paddle shifters, and a yellow top marker. Very stealth design, looks very cool. Quality here feels amazing. From the buttons to the click of the paddle shifters, the whole thing just feels super nice. And you will need to mount this wheel on the TX base. It comes separate. The base here is really the star of the show, as once you get to this level, you can begin to add on different wheels, upgrade pedal sets, add a manual shifter, e-brake, the works. It really becomes the hub of like an ecosystem at that point. It's a force feedback wheel with 900 degrees of rotation. This is dual belt, single brushless motor design. Install on the desk here is very similar. Bracket feels the same, but with a heavier duty mounting screw. Again, the only play is in the up direction, lesser this time. The whole thing feels a lot more solid than the entry-level wheel. We'll also need to run power to this base, as well as a similar plug to connect the pedals. This is like a proprietary RJ45 type connector. You want to take care of this connector too. It'd be really easy to step on this thing if you left it on the floor. Kind of an odd design choice here for something at this price point, that this is not a detachable or completely replaceable cable, because if something happens to this, you're going to be looking at warranty work or a replacement pedal set. I do like the fact that the power supply is located inside the base, so I don't have to worry about finding a spot for a separate power brick. Pedals here feel a lot more stout and do include a clutch as well. Immediately, the base inspires a lot more confidence. I also noticed that the gas required a lot less force to actuate, but the brake pedal felt very similar to the actuation force on the Ferrari set. There's a lot of adjustments here as well, in the spacing on the pedals, on the height, and on the angle of the gas pedal. You can even install a conical brake mod and vary the tension if you want a little different feel on that brake pedal. These pedals don't move at all, even on the slick laminate. They also include mounting holes as well, of course, if you're going to mount it to a sim. In terms of installation, this was not really a plug-and-play experience on the PC. You'll need to download and install some drivers, make sure you have the firmware updated properly. Then, because I'm playing Horizon, you really need to go in and change some settings to make this a little more manageable, because moving from a controller with assist to this wheel, the training wheels are off. You're going to need to dial in how the force feedback works in this game. I'll leave a link in the description of the video I used for this. The other thing that was a little odd for me here is the button mapping. The PC did not see the controller as an Xbox controller, so Windows doesn't feed you the Xbox button prompts that match up with the wheel. Also of note is that in every game I played, I had to go in and flip-flop the assignments for both the clutch and the gas pedal. One thing I wasn't prepared for here is noise. The amount of noise it makes when it spins this wheel over is noticeable. It's not a quiet experience. In all fairness, neither is like slamming a manual gearbox or stomping on a clutch, but something to be aware of in the event you have roommates. There is a little fan located inside this unit too that kicks on after a while to help keep things cool, but it's barely audible. And if you've got a headset on, it's not audible at all. So on one hand, this is a lot of fun. Once you get your settings dialed in, it's very responsive. The wheel moving on its own, giving you resistance, letting the cars kind of counter steer themselves out of a turn while you just catch the wheel. It becomes very intuitive. On the other hand, it comes at a cost, and that's learning curve. Particularly learning how to drift on this wheel setup is a totally different animal. I'm not there yet. Clutch kicking means you're actually kicking the clutch. Counter steering means you're actually counter steering a wheel that's fighting you the whole time. So it could be really tempting to get frustrated here and go back to using a controller. I'm not going to. The learning curve here, as difficult as it is a lot of fun. It definitely feels like you're building up a skill set as you go, and it starts to get to the point where you kind of feel like a badass behind the wheel. I did feel comfortable stepping up to manual and then finally manual with clutch with this setup, because force feedback allowed me to learn pretty quick. If you're new to a wheel, the best tip I can give you is to start with a bone stock car and just cruise around the map to get a feel. Keep your marker arrows on so you can kind of get an idea of where your brake points are going to be, and then just gradually raise the tune of the car until you get more confident. Horizon is really my game. I've just always kind of clicked with it, but I did pick up Dirt Rally 2.0 as well, and I've had a couple people tell me that Assetto Corsa is one to grab. These are definitely more sim-style games versus arcade racers, and this wheel is obviously intended to be used for that. I have a ways to go before I'm anything other than pure garbage at Dirt Rally. I found it to be pretty punishing. One thing I did notice straight away in Dirt Rally though is that the controls feel spot on right out of the gate with no adjustment needed. I also realized that the way you play an arcade racer is fundamentally different than how you play a sim. That's probably why I never got into them, because that balls out throttle with minimal braking to initiate a drift is just not going to cut it on a wheel setup. So in terms of overall value, this is going to be kind of a tough conversation for me because I don't have a lot to compare this to. The Logitech G920 seems to be a big seller. You can get a kit that actually includes the shifter as well for right around $280. I read a lot of these reviews. I would encourage you to do the same. I'm not going to regurgitate a lot of that information here, but there seems to be enough meat on the bones to justify the cost difference between that and this, depending on how serious you are. The TX base that we looked at here today is by no means new. This thing's been out on the market for a while. There's an alarming number of one-star reviews if you go to Amazon and look this thing up. It's my understanding they had some quality control issues with this in the beginning, but that those are all ironed out now. Thrustmaster themselves also offer a higher-end wheel now called the TGT. It's for PS4 and PC. me. It's got even more refined force feedback and some new motors added in there designed specifically to take advantage of stuff in Gran Turismo. That set will run you about $530. And then of course you have Fanatec. They seem to be in a completely different price tier. Like their entry-level set for the PS4 will run you right at like $560. Their entry-level set for the Xbox will run you $800. And then like sky's the limit after that. Yikes. There was a lot of stuff to cover going over both these units, and it was completely foreign territory for me. So one thing that I don't want to get lost here in the process of this video is just how fun this is. It really starts to feel like you're climbing behind the wheel of your favorite cars, like your dream cars, in a way that a controller never will. This is easily the most fun I've had playing a driving game in a really long time. So after this experience, do I want to go further down the rabbit hole? Absolutely. But obviously, I'm a mouse and keyboard guy. This isn't something that can live on my desk all the time. So I got in touch with the fellas over at Next Level Racing out of Australia, and I'm going to be doing a full sim build with them. We're going to take their GT track cockpit, a monitor stand, throw in a manual shifter from Thrustmaster using the TX kit that we have already here today, and we're just going to do the whole nine. Just build the whole sim out and see what that experience feels like. So stay tuned for that video. Should be out here in about 3 weeks. Big thanks to Thrustmaster for giving me the opportunity to experience something that I've always wanted to. There are affiliate links for everything we discussed down in the description. I really want to hear from you guys on this one too. Is this something you've considered doing? Have you done it already? Is there any tips for somebody to learn the wheel faster? Any guys you like to watch that specialize in this kind of thing on YouTube? I really want to get into it. Whatever you got, just throw it down in the comments. Questions, hit me down there in the comments too, or drop by the Discord. And that's it for this time. I'm Brian P. Thanks so much for watching. And until next time, stay up.